Hello, 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 welcome to the special edition of Radio Free Wall Street. Now, what do I mean by special edition? Well, we got a scoop for you, we got a news story for you, and we want to share it with you, and that is about OPEC. It turns out that two of the OPEC biggest members, one of them not even regarded as a member by most people, is Russia and Saudi Arabia. And they have now decided they're going to take control of the OPEC organization like never seen before. Now, Saudi has always been the two-ton gorilla. Now, in recent years, you have seen a huge upswing in Russian oil production. Russia has pretty much stayed out of the OPEC cartel, has pretty much kept themselves completely isolated and running their own oil policy. Now, the Saudis and Russia have agreed on a complicated and comprehensive cooperation practice, or should I say policy, or should I say manipulation, or should I say game. Oil markets are bizarre. Information in oil markets are, to be honest with you, sketchy, if not little more than PR releases. OPEC has had a record of manipulating prices with disastrous results, resulting in wide swings, resulting in boom and bust. And it's been plagued mainly by OPEC's great fear of the American oil production giant. OPEC and Saudi and members have been colluding with Greenpeace organizations and ecology movements. They were successful for a long time in stopping pipelines, successful in stopping the west coast, the east coast of Florida and the west coast of the United States from going to production, and all in the ecology movement. And it's a great story that's never been told of OPEC's manipulation of the psyche of Americans, especially through the ecology movement. Now, that has changed. Fracking is so pervasive, profitable, prevalent, that game is all over with. And OPEC is facing a brand new war with America on oil. Now, they got a reluctant Russia to agree to this latest round of oil price manipulations that brought on basis Brent $80 barrel oil. Now, the people who are most concerned about U.S. production are the Russians. The Russians are far more sophisticated in their analysis and understanding of American might than the Saudis are. I'm talking about might in the oil business. And there has been a war raging in the various compartments and departments of OPEC. And this war has been raging over, oh my shit and God, who is in control? What's going to happen to our market share? What happens if America's production does not stop? The Saudis have always misunderstood American production. The Saudis have made grave mistakes. Saudi Arabia's push in the past 10 years to get oil prices higher, that brought in the fracking revolution. They drove down the price, fracking stopped, and the Saudis believe that that was it, game, set, match. They have nothing to fear any longer from American fracking. Now all of a sudden it's back again. And the Russians have been the ones pointing out that, hey, listen, American fracking companies are disjointed. These are cowboys and Indians, like the Russians like to describe American businesses in the oil patch, and that they're hard to control. And they are now making major breakthroughs in technology. The Saudis have long been of the opinion that U.S. fracking would peak, that fracking wells would fall out of production very quickly and need to be refracked. And now it's been proven that's not the case. Fracking technology fracks wells on an economic basis. Their production remains, and huge amounts of oil properties are about to come to market. And that has got the Russians extremely upset. So how do they solve the problem? This gets into the intrigue. OPEC cannot be seen as overproducing. They cannot be seen as removing their support for oil prices. And large producers and small producers alike in OPEC are very concerned about the new bro between the crown prince and the dictator of Russia, Putin. To understand this dynamic, understand that Russian oil companies have been very aggressive about expanding their market share and their production. And they compete tooth and nail, unbelievably, with the Saudis in the Chinese market, which is where the growth has been regarded. Now there's a third player that no one wanted to have happen, and that is America. America is now moving in to the coveted Chinese and Asian markets. America is now competitive, very competitive in discounting. And that means that American oil companies, oil producers, are grasping market share away from the Russians. And this has ended a blow up in OPEC, which, as you saw, has driven the price of oil down significantly. And this is just a shot across the bow of what we believe will be $30 barrel oil. Now, Russia well understands the might of U.S. free enterprise system, of independent oil producers, and the fact that you can't get them under control. The last thing Russia wants right now is lose more market share. And if OPEC continues to undersupply the market and American production keeps on increasing, then they got a problem. They are losing customers that they won't get back. There's another dynamic here. I'll explain what the other dynamic is. China is in a trade war with the United States of America. And it's all about the calculation of how much oil the U.S. will produce. Where will that go? China's strategy in this trade war is one that's very, very clever. If they go ahead and obtain U.S. oil as an import, then that is a simple way to make a massive and rapid deduction in their balance of trade deficit with the United States. Now, the Saudis are not up to speed in this, okay? They're not understanding this. The Russians are petrified that with huge investments to supply China oil, that America will come in and replace the supplier choice. Now, the Saudis have poo-pooed this, okay, so we understand. We've talked about that before. But now there's another game here, and that is Russia. Russia believes that U.S. production will increase faster than anyone is predicting. And that's based on Russian spy agencies and military assessments, which is correct. So the game is this. How much oil comes out of America and how soon into the Chinese basin? And at what cost? Now, China's playing a very cagey game here. They're saying, well, listen, the U.S. can't supply that much oil, and we're just throwing the American president a bone. And we still covered our relationships with the Russians and the Chinese. And America is not to be concerned. Now, Russians are smarter than that. Russians' assessment, and rightly so, is, oh my God, American oil is blowing in here. Their production's increasing. Everyone's underestimating how soon America gets to 13, 14, 15 million barrels a day. The U.S. market is pretty stable. It's not a growth market. That means that all the extra production is being exported out. So the game is this. You got to cut up the pie among ever hungry members, but it's an ever decreasing in size pie. Now, Russia and the Saudis have come to agreement that maybe these are the two biggest players in oil to counterbalance the United States. And these smaller producers will give lip service to, but we're going to basically open the spigots and we're going to produce more oil. Other OPEC members are balking at this, saying, wait a minute, we want our share and we like these high prices, and if you open the spigots, prices are going to drop, and we're going to lose badly needed revenue. The problem is that what the lesser sophisticated, should we say, oil producers like Nigeria don't understand is this is going to happen anyway. So it's just going to be a game of who can produce the most oil, the fastest, at the best price, and supply a oversupplied market. Now, OPEC's playing a game saying, well, if, and this is how they're placating, they say, well, listen, with Venezuela oil coming out of the market, and the United States production pretty much peaking, and then the sanctions go in effect against Iran, our problem's solved. We're going to have a shortfall. We're going to have to make it up. Here's what most people don't understand. Donald Trump has been pushing hard on Saudi Arabia to get this oil price down and down a lot. Hear me carefully. We've been talking about Donald Trump a lot, and you're pretty much discussing with it, and so am I. But the reality is that Donald Trump's looking at these elections unlike I've ever seen a president focused ever before. And I guess he's got good reason to be focused more than the average politician. We won't get into that. But he has now had constant contact with the Saudis and Putin about the fact that they're crippling the world economy and that oil demand will not only not increase as much as expected, but perish of thought could fall. Translation. Donald Trump realized that his core group of voters are very sensitive to the price of gasoline. And gasoline has now gone up enough that the howls of pain are heard in Washington, meaning Donald Trump and meaning his entire re-election apparatus. Information we have is that Donald Trump has been leading hard on both Russia and the Saudis to instantaneously increase production and get this oil price down. It's all about the price of gasoline. Now, our intelligences and our opinion is that the Saudis have to do a very delicate balancing act. And that is they have to appease their other members while at the same time do something to placate Trump. Now remember, you've got Brazil, Latin America, South America, the poor Asian countries that are really getting crippled by this oil price. And the situation will not resolve itself easily or quickly, okay? So now we're at it. Listen, this is an intriguing situation. They have to supply more oil to the market, but bullshit the market that they're not supplying more oil to the market. They have to convince the other members of OPEC that there is not some new cartel being formed with Russia. Listen to me carefully. Cartel members have seen this new chummy situation between Saudi Arabia and Russia. Well, that's the world top three producers. You got Saudi Arabia, you got Russia, and you got America. And America is joining that fraternity and may just beat out everybody else. There is no chance of getting American oil producers into this cartel, okay? No. It's not that they're honest guys and don't want cartels. There's just too damn many of them. They play too aggressive of a game, and it's cutthroat out there. So this now is a situation that the equation moves to how they gloss over the need to increase production, pretending like the market is going to be undersupplied anyway. In other words, hey guys, of course we're going to increase our production a little bit because Venezuela's production is going to fall. And oh yes, Trump is putting sanctions on Iran. Now in conversations, it has been pointed out to Donald Trump that the biggest driver of prices is going to be what he does with the Iranian situation. My opinion is there will be pseudo sanctions that really are not sanctions and really will, in some convoluted way, exclude the Iranian oil industry. Now, if that happens, then we're to a very dicey situation because they're going to get snookered. Remember, American production is due to increase and continue to increase on a steady basis. There's no end in sight. No one knows what the potential is, but it's huge. And it is growing and growing and growing. And now the problem is that you've got the other members who are almost out and out rebelling against the Saudis, who are basically the glue to hold OPEC together. So we've got a cartel that's on very shaky grounds. And cartels normally fail as members forget about the interests of the cartel and go after their own interests. And that is very much the move that is taking place as we speak out there. We had a situation where all of a sudden the players are figuring out that they're about to get screwed by the Saudis and by the new bro deal that is growing in a scary way. I can tell you that other producers are very, very concerned about side deals and production arrangements that end up leaving them out. And they don't like it one bit. And this is a situation that is not something that is temporary nature. This represents a fundamental change in the oil business. Are you hearing me? A fundamental change. Oil markets will never be the same after the United States realizes its potential. Now, as America grows to what will be a 20 million barrel a day production, it's 10 years, the equation of who supplies oil and at what price forever changes. And the answer is going to be that it's America who decides the price. It's America that supplies the oil. It's America that is the two-ton gorilla. And everyone else starts sucking hind tit. Now, these are glacier moves that take time. But our prediction is that what is usual in an OPEC meeting may not happen this time. Normally, when OPEC gets together for a meeting, the price starts increasing. And the cartel announces how they've come to production agreement and they want to protect the integrity of the market. You've heard all that bullshit before. But this time, there's a different game in town. This time, Russians have the seat at the table, and Vladimir Putin has a much deeper understanding of U.S. oil potential, a much better understanding of U.S. technological changes that are still continuing. See, among the Saudis, Saudi oil has been produced the same way forever. Okay? They have a different equation. They have a different price structure. And now all of a sudden they have to deal with a new game in fracking that they don't really understand. The point you need to understand here is this. The oil business is a very stodgy kind of business with statistics shared among the players without a lot of understanding of new technology. They have never had to embrace it before. They don't care about it. They didn't have a need to play the game. So therefore, how they calculate oil, how they conducted production has been the same for a long time. Now, oil field productivity figures, speed of recovery, duration of production that was very predictable has been thrown on its ass. Now you got a situation where, holy shit, fracking comes to town and we don't know what that well is going to look like. We don't know how long that production is going to last. We don't know what is going to be the outcome of production, and that means that, listen to me carefully, production predictability is now been thrown on its ass. Nobody knows how long wells are going to produce. No one knows what's the recoverable oil. It's a very important question there. And no one knows costs. So those issues will play out in a much longer time frame. But what you need to understand is that all of a sudden, the oil industry has changed in ways that no one has realized. And all of a sudden, the dynamics of the industry are not so easy to plot. They're not so predictable. They are now looking into an area where the other players are not playing games, are not participating in their manipulations. They're looking at a situation where now, all of a sudden, people are saying, we don't know what the price of oil is going to be. we don't really know what supply is going to be. We really don't know demand. And that means the predictability in the market is leaving. Now, let me explain. I want to be very clear here. Oil at the prices we are seeing now is absolutely, totally outrageous. Okay? These are prices that cannot be sustained. These are prices that do not realistically compute supply, demand, and future supply. And these are just basically desperate attempts by OPEC cartel members to bring up the price because the Saudis need more revenue. Now all of a sudden, all that revenue enhancement deal they're doing and predictability in the market is leaving them. All of a sudden, their budgets are not working out. And now you got a situation where people are just standing there going, we don't know where we're at in this oil business. We don't know where oil's going. We don't know who's supplying who to what. And we don't know how to calculate this. And that is a no man's land that hasn't existed before. So what's going to be very interesting here is how the Saudis compute all this and how they decide to price into their equation future production demand. Now, here's what our opinion is. Our opinion is that the world has far too much oil. We've already seen signs from the people we know in the business that we regard as reliable that Saudi Arabia has already started increasing its production and that Russia's about to do the same. And the game is to increase production and deny it everywhere. Now, how long they can play this game and how successfully is a really interesting question. Our bet is that they will not be successful in manipulating this market. They will not be successful in controlling the outcomes. Listen to me carefully. Oil business has a way of getting out of hand for producers. The oil business has a way of surprising them in what the market price is going to be, what demand is going to be, who's going to produce what, and who is going to drop out of the game. The oil price we are seeing today has priced in a huge, huge disruption in supply from Venezuela and from our really, really good friends, the Iranians. Now, that disruption is based on the belief that Donald Trump will put sanctions against the Iranians. And we're not so sure about that. We believe he's going to talk a hard deal, but that he is not going to really stop the flow of oil and create a market that is going higher and higher to elections that will cost him dearly. We believe that Donald Trump's game is one of talking loudly and carrying a little stick. Now, if that is the case, then that means we have a phenomenal opportunity here, because that means the oil prices cannot maintain itself. It is our analysis and belief that that is exactly what's going on here. We believe that there's no way in hell that oil prices can stay this high, and there's no way in hell that this doesn't work out to be an unmitigated disaster in the future. And this is an opinion that we have based on, should we say, an enlightened view of the oil business, an enlightened view of who's supplying what to whom, and our firm belief that the market is incorrectly assessing what is really going on out there in production and consumption, and that the market refuses to accept the fact that higher prices are indeed bringing down the value of oil. And here's the reason why. Contrary to popular myth, the world is heading into a recession. This recession has already hit Latin America. It's already hit Latin America demand. This recession is taking root in America, and it's already started in Europe. And so just price demand destruction is one factor that we look at. But there's another one that is a little more sophisticated analysis, and that's saying, okay, what does the global economy look like? What will be the situation with oil producers? Who will be hurt by a slowing economy? And what does that do to demand? That is the part of the equation that OPEC has never been any good at. Now, they have always undersupplied and oversupplied, and they have always been more optimistic in what growth and demand would be and could be. It's incredible at that. But there's another factor in here that they're not understanding, and that is the situation with the health of the global economy. It is our firm belief that we're having a global recession. It's going to be really ugly. It's going to be really big. It's going to be really bad. And it's going to be global in nature. And we also believe that the understanding of that, the accounting for it, has not entered into the oil business. It hasn't entered, but the central banks aren't even understanding it. So we are now at a stage where you got a phenomenal oversupply situation that could blow our hands. And let me tell you some of the wild cards of this. One big wild card that you've got to look at, one thing that can really drive this equation in ways we don't understand, is if there is indeed sanctions. If Donald Trump does go ahead and really sanction the hell out of Iran, that's one factor. Now, it's our belief that even if he does that, it will not change the equation. I'll tell you why. That's because they're really good at getting over these sanctions, and they're really good at keeping that oil flowing anyway, and they've gotten very good at it. And you've got China, and you've got Russia that have agreed to end their Iranian friends in need. And that means that for the first time, the cartel is aiding another member, and that is Russian psychology. That is the Russian push in there. Oh, remember, OPEC has never been a military power. I mean, a bunch of third-rate shitholes. Some are pretty wealthy, but still third-rate shitholes, certainly not part of a military equation. Now the alliance with the Saudis and the Russians changed all that. Now there's a military might to back these decisions. There's a military threat of force that says, hey, you're going to have sanctions, we're going to get around it. And Russia is very quick to point out that the world sanctions on its taking of Crimea have been ineffective and have been timid, and that the dire consequences were never realized. Now the Saudis are saying, we like that part of the equation. And so you've now got these other dynamics in here with Russia, which is a military superpower, collaborating with OPEC. And that's something we haven't seen before. Now, this was a one-year kind of experiment, a first date kind of thing. It's been very successful. But now Russia is demanding a different strategy. And it's going to be very hard for the Saudis to say no. So our prediction is that despite the threats, which are real, of Venezuela falling off the map and not producing, with the threat of Trump's sanctions against Iran, the market is having a hard time finding balance. Now, it is our opinion that now that Trump has attacked the Saudis twice publicly and in private negotiations with them and the Russian, demanding that they supply oil to the market, it is our belief that Donald Trump has come to the conclusion that higher oil prices are bad for his campaign, bad for the Republicans to hold on to the House and Senate, which is job one in the Trump administration. So our belief is, after some face saving and some nice quotes about how they're controlling the market and all that shit, that the market will see increased supply out of Russia and the Saudis at least. And if that happens, Katie bar the door, because you got an oil market that can fall $20. And we believe that the market just got a sniff of that on Friday when you saw the big drop. And we think there's more bad news to come. And we believe that this game is going to get uglier and uglier as time gets on, meaning that the oil prices in the market will be harder and harder for them to control. Now, if we're right in that assessment, there is phenomenal opportunities in the oil market. And we believe that that will move forward in a dynamic that will have a life of its own. This is, remember, the other part of this is that the Saudis will relent and understand that once they see the economic numbers going to hell. Remember, they can watch the popular economic reports. They understand what a U.S. recession is. They don't really understand it at a gristle level because that's not how they think. That's not how they approach the market. Their own way of doing business has always influenced their thinking in a negative way. That's why Saudi, in essence, has squandered his great oil wealth on these mega real estate projects and never really invested in its people or invested in businesses that could sustain its model of being something other than an oil producer. And we look at that mistake to be reinforced by Vladimir Putin. I mean, is there really a Russian high-tech, thriving, independent economy? No. Is there really a Russian consumer manufacturing? I mean, do they even produce automobiles? The answer is they're just not there. And let me tell you what it is. It's the curse of being blessed. Countries that have been blessed with great mineral wealth, be it gold mines like South Africa or the oil producers, they seem to be unable to get away from what is very fast, easy money. In other words, oil is an extremely profitable business. And for people like Saudi that have so much of it, when they run the numbers on any other venture, it pales in comparison. So it's hard for them to understand, or they pay a lot of lip service to it, to really understand any cross-capitalization, to really understand a truly market economy. Commodity producers normally stay primitive and do not develop an entrepreneurial spirit, do not embrace technology. Look, a great example is Japan. They have almost no mineral wealth. They're a very small country. In a lot of ways, they're number 2, number 3 in the global export powerhouse, depending on how you want to count the numbers. And they've done it because they have nothing else. There's something about no easy money, no mineral wealth, that drives economies forward in breakneck speed. And there's something about that mineral wealth, especially oil, that seems to be a curse, as is a blessing. And I believe that we're at a situation now where that curse is going to be fulfilled. I think we are now into another cycle of oil markets that on balance will plunge, and I think we're going to get severe new lows. And my opinion is that the Venezuela crisis will resolve itself. And my opinion is that Trump carries a very little stick and a very big mouth. And he speaks loudly, like I said before, and carries a little stick. And that is a factor in this oil equation because the Saudis need America desperately. The Russians need their oil exports desperately. And these factors are going to work to, two liars sitting at a table whose vested interests are opposed to each other and who at the end of the day will say anything, sign anything, promise anything, but they're just going to screw these other companies to the wall. This is the way cartels fall apart. And it's our opinion that the effectiveness of the OPEC cartel will be greatly diminished. And by Russia, that's not a cartel member that wants to play the cartel, is the great disruptor that will end OPEC's reign as the oil price setter. We believe that the setting of oil prices will now move back to America, and that U.S. oil companies will set the price by how much they produce, and we believe that price will be one much lower because they're going to produce much more.